Mike Johnson, welcome back in the game in T-Town. I hope you're doing well, sir.
I'm doing good, man. I was shocked to see you guys were in business today, man. SEC Country headquarters over here shut everything down over here in Atlanta, and I thought Tuscaloosa was a little bit more in the crosshairs than we were.
We might have. We've got a different freeze warning here. It was. It's about Hugh Freeze the warning over here, rather than the actual temp. So, Mike, let me ask you: when you hear the name Hugh Freeze and you think about Alabama, what's your reaction to even bringing up the name?
I know it's still raw for a lot of people in and around the SEC, and the feeling that I've gotten from most of the people I've talked to is, they're nervous. I think nervous is the right word. I think that everybody looks at the situation, says, hey, you know what? That was only, 5 months ago or 6 months ago that Hugh Freeze was involved in all that stuff, and I think a lot of Alabama fans are nervous to have him on campus, to have him around this program, to have his name associated with this dynasty under Nick Saban. I think that's been most of the sentiment and the feedback that I've got from most people I've talked to. You know me, Ryan. I'm not one of these guys. I'm not going to judge a ton on Hugh Freeze. I think that he did more damage to himself possibly than he did to anybody else, to himself and his family. And so, he's got to look himself in the mirror, and I'm all for giving second opportunities. I don't know that I want him as the offensive coordinator at Alabama right now. I think there's too much offensive firepower, and there's too many things on the table for next season as far as where we go quarterback-wise, as far as where his offense goes, to kind of, leave it up to a guy in Hugh Freeze that you're not sure what you're getting. But I understand the need for a guy like Nick Saban to look into it. I understand that Nick's been kicking the tires on it. I understand that he's been getting a ton of feedback on it. So I think I'm like every Alabama fan out there that, you trust in Nick Saban in situations like these. And a lot of the times he's made the correct move and moved this team in the right direction.
Mike, let me go back because this is our first conversation since Alabama was able to win the national title. As you're walking out of that stadium and just your overall feeling, I mean, I'm sure it was like most of us, it was kind of an emotional roller coaster. I mean, I had doubts that they were going to get the job done. Then they ended up getting the job done, and very rewarding for the Crimson Tide.
I was, I guess, dumbfounded is the right word. Dumbfounded or still in shock. I thought there was a decent chance that Alabama could win the game. I was still not certain about the consistencies we had on offense, particularly in the passing game. I thought that Georgia had a very strong defense and a very good chance of winning the game. But the nature in which Alabama was able to pull it off, obviously the quarterback move, the turnovers, the missed field goal opportunity at the end, and then getting in an overtime on a 2nd and 26. It's a story you can't write. No matter how much you think you know both teams, no matter how much you think you know the X's and O's of football, you just can't write a story like that, man. You just can't. I think that's why college football, and I know you agree with this, college football is the best thing going, right now as far as sports goes. You just can't beat the drama and the personalities that go into writing a story like that. Everybody was shocked. I was one of the guys that was shocked. I just think that this team had a destiny, and they arrived at the right point in the season to get there.
Mike, Coach Saban said following the game that his offense needed a spark, and that's one of the reasons why he turned for Tua Tagovailoa. But let me ask you, how hard is that? And we talked about this with Jalen during his first year at the University of Alabama. But for a true freshman to come in and win his team over, it seemed like not only was it a spark for offense, but it even seemed like that for the defensive, that everybody kind of bought in to what this young man brought to the table.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that the move was made when it's made. And there's been a lot of people around the country, including Scott Frost and some of the people that have weighed in their opinion on the entire goings-on with the quarterback situation. And my question to everybody is, listen, I think it sounds really good. Tua is good. In hindsight, looking back, Tua won the national title game. Why was it Tua in the middle of the season? It's just when you go back to those moments, where was a good time? There was not a good time. Was it on the road at Starkville when Jalen's leading a comeback? Was it in the biggest rivalry of the year at Auburn on the road in a very hectic environment? I think that Nick Saban planned to play Tua against Clemson, but you didn't need him. I just don't know when was the better opportunity to make a move like that. And obviously everybody can look in hindsight and say, oh, well, it worked. Well, he was going to take a lot of flack if it didn't. If you bench a guy who has lost one football game or two football games in Jalen Hurts, and you put in a true freshman and it doesn't work out, or Tua gets in and throws a pick six, or something crazy happens, a sack fumble for a touchdown, then Nick Saban's being fed to the wolves. And so I think you'd have to take all that into account when you really give your opinion on the situation. I thought it was one of the boldest moves I've ever seen on a football field from a college football coach to put him in that situation. And somehow, some way, it ended up paying off in the end. And I'm still trying to catch my breath from it.
Mike, let me ask you about Alex Leatherwood from an offensive lineman perspective. What did you see for him that just allowed him to have so much success? What do you see in this young man?
Well, I think he was able to keep his poise. And a lot of people, you look at offensive line and to the untrained eye, it almost looks like you're guarding a basketball player. It looks like you're just trying to, keep your eyes in his chest, go side to side with these rush defensive ends. It's just not true. Alex Leatherwood played inside to out. He shut down, the power game, and he was able to shut down the speed game as well from some of the pass rushers they had. And I thought he played violent in the run game. He was able to really roll his hips and get some of the movement from the double teams up front. I thought he played relentlessly. I thought in some of Tua's scrambles that you're able to see Alex Leatherwood really finish. I was particularly impressed with Alex Leatherwood. There was a ton of freshmen on the field. Ton of great storylines when it comes to Najee Harris and Devontae Smith and obviously Tua. But Alex Leatherwood, this was such a hard thing to ask this guy to do, to come in against Lorenzo Carter and Davin Bellamy and this Georgia defense, and to step into the first meaningful snaps he's had in his entire career and to play at that level as a true freshman in that kind of environment. I thought it was incredible. I thought he played within himself. You didn't see him overreaching. He wasn't lunging. He trusted his own strength. He's able to sit back in his hips and get distance between himself with his arms. It was exactly how you would draw up a situation like that. And I think that his future ceiling is absolutely through the roof. I'm so excited for his future.
Well, Mike, you go back to that final play, and I know we talk a lot about Tua Tagovailoa and Devontae Smith and the skill position, the verticals. But without his job that he did masterful on that play, I wish I could sit down with you and just hear a breakdown of that play, that one play, because there's not a pass from Tua Tagovailoa. You got to give him some time to sit there and read what he was able to do. But without Alex Leatherwood, there is no reading because he's probably sacked.
No, it's so true. It's so true. And I guess what people who haven't played the position, or if you were never an offensive lineman or haven't watched it closely, the nature of the things like that are when you see your quarterback out of the corner of your eye, it's you have a tendency to put your head down and try to get your helmet or your face on that rusher and to try to run your legs and get him pushed by the pocket. Well, then all of a sudden that rush defensive end just kind of slaps you by. You've got your head down, your feet are moving. He can plant you on your face and he can make a sack. What you saw is Alex Leatherwood be able to match athleticism and to keep his hands extended and to keep his face out of that and still be able to move his feet from side to side. It was clinical. It really was a clinic in terms of, being a left tackle. Tua steps right up past the rush and delivers a strike. But you're right. None of that is possible if it's not for Alex Leatherwood and his ability to really mature on the spot and understand the situation and stay close to the coaching he's been given from Brent Key and company.
How have you seen Nick Saban change since your days here in Tuscaloosa?
This is such an interesting question for me because, I was a part of that first camp. You hear anybody who was a part of the first Nick Saban camp at Alabama back in 2007, he was on an absolute mission. He was on a tear that he was going to change the dynamic that was in Tuscaloosa that was in place. He always said, this is the process. If you're not willing to get on board, you need to get out of the way. We're going to replace some of the guys that aren't willing to buy in. Well, by God, we had to deal with that on the field. 110-degree heat out there, doing that week in and week out. It was an absolute nightmare. And I still think he has that edge. But I think he's willing to do it now in a more joyful way. That a lot of the people that are coming in understand the greatness. I think it's tough to keep guys at the top and keep those guys hungry, but he just seems to be willing to lend a smile. I think he understands that a joyful Nick Saban helps out with boosters, helps out with the fan base, helps out with recruiting a ton. When you see some of the other coaches out there like Dabo Swinney that are always smiling, you have to have that version of Nick Saban. I don't want to say he's softened, but I think he's just more willing to be joyful in a lot of these situations. And I think that aids in a lot of good ways for what he's trying to get done on the football field and off. And I'm excited for him. He seems more at ease. Obviously, the news coming out this week that he's bought into a golf course over here in Georgia. he seems like a guy that's enjoying life right now, and I think that's a scary, scary thing for the rest of college football.
Yeah, you said it, and Mike, I want to tell you something, and I want to share this with you, and I'm going to tell you that this is your coach, okay? Monday he wins the championship. We walk out of that stadium at 2:00. Thursday he calls a staff meeting. Most of the staff is like, okay, well, this is kind of unique. He walks into a staff meeting on Thursday and absolutely rips them a complete new one, okay? I'm talking about, I was told by one of the guys who was in the meeting that it was the worst butt chewing that he's ever had from Nick Saban. He lit into them and said, he called them everything in the book, said that they'd become complacent. In 2 days now, he set the bar within that coaching staff going forward through this offseason. Does that sound like the Nick Saban you know?
It absolutely does. It absolutely does. How many times have we heard Nick Saban talk about the 24-hour rule? And, hey, win or loss, you have 24 hours to either get over it or enjoy it. And I guess, listen, practice what you preach, man. Everybody knows that he holds those Bama players to a high standard, but he holds that coaching staff to even higher standard than that. I think it's so it tickles me to death when I hear stories like that, because I know I got my butt chewed. I know all my buddies got their butt chewed. Those staff meetings behind closed doors, never got a chance to peek in on them, but I can only imagine the look on those guys' faces 2 days after they, they're getting fitted for national title rings and they're getting their butt chewed about what's going on.
So, something tells me they go back to their office and they go, let me see if I can dial up a number. Can I get out of Tuscaloosa pretty quick?
Yeah, seemingly what's going on in it right there. It's been more staff turnover than I can ever imagine under Nick Saban. You tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't ever remember this many positions being changed up under Nick Saban's watch. And I'm sure you guys have covered it, front to back. But man, just a ton of different situations on that coaching staff going on. And hey, I wouldn't be shocked if some of them thought, man, I got to get out of town. No, Brian Daboll's got the 6 kids. He doesn't want to be on the road recruiting at all times and doing all that sort of thing. But listen, Nick Saban's going to respect you, but if you're not on board to get the job done the way he wants it to, then get out of the way.
Yeah, and let me say this, Mike, there's more changes coming. We know on the surface, but you get through recruiting day, there's more coming. There's more coming in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, I have no doubt about it, and I think that's what's exciting for Alabama fans. The question's always been asked, and I know you get this question every offseason as well as I do. When is Nick Saban's tenure going to come to an end? I just think that it's such a good sight for a lot of Alabama fans that he seems as hungry as ever to get this coaching staff corrected, to recruit hungrier than he ever has, and I think it's such a good sign for the next few years.
Mike, I want to ask you a question. You won a national title in 2009. To my knowledge, I don't think anybody tried to say, hey, we were also champions here. What do you laugh at what's happening down in Central Florida? Today there was a bill that was introduced. They're going to make an actual license plate, a real license plate. This is not like a little Barbie car or a little Tonka truck. Okay, this is a real vehicle in Florida. Will be driving around with a license plate that says National Champs Central Florida 2017.
I probably go easier on the UCF than most people. I think it's funny. Listen, they have the right to do it. I don't. It doesn't mean I have to pay attention to it. It's kind of the moniker that I've kind of taken on. But there is a little part of me that says, well, they don't really have the opportunity to win a national title. I think their administration. I think the administration around college football has to do a better job of getting a situation put in place where UCF can at least be mentioned at the top. I think it's funny. Listen, I chuckle at it just as much as anybody else does. The fact that the transitive property, or they could have gone toe to toe with either one of these teams in the national title game is funny to me. But you know what? I think that at some point UCF does have to have some kind of right to make a move towards the top. I just don't think this is the year. I think the license plate is just, the Disney World parade and the license plate.
The billboard in Tuscaloosa. The billboard in Tuscaloosa.
Listen, I said this the other day on SEC Country Live. I wish that Nick Saban and company, I wish they'd schedule a UCF game for the day after the Louisville game next year. Just go ahead and kill 2 birds with 1 stone down in Orlando, and let's get this thing knocked out. Let's quit all the talk. We can knock it out in back-to-back days. We'll put our second string in against UCF and bring that one home.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, I always appreciate your insight, man. You always have a good way to looking at things, and that may give us a conversation, because maybe it's time for us in college football to re-examine. Should we make the Power 5? a part of the conversation? I mean, excuse me, the non-Power 5, should we give them a seat at the table, or should we just continue to pretend that they're not even part of college football? I mean, it's a debate that I think will be an off-season conversation that we move forward.
I completely agree, and I could go on for days about the way I feel about it, and the situation that I feel like we should have at the top, and do you have a 16 playoff or an 18 playoff? But I think in the end, I would be frustrated if I were on a team that went undefeated and didn't even get a sniff in the top 10. So I don't have to pay attention to it. I won't pay attention to it, but putting myself in their shoes, if I was following UCF football or a part of that team, tough pill to swallow either way. So, I think it'll definitely be a talking point for the next couple of years for sure.